G'day guys, how's it going? My name is CJ. So 2017 is quickly becoming the year of the bezel-less screen and dual camera smartphone. Whilst we've seen some absolutely stunning examples coming from Samsung, LG, and also with Apple with the upcoming iPhone 10, we've also seen a swath of budget-oriented Chinese bezel-less screens with dual camera systems. With the price that these phones are being sold for, you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, why don't I buy one of these phones instead? But as with most things in life, you quite often get what you pay for. The device I've got today is called the Maze Alpha. It's a bezel-less phone with a dual camera setup that's being sold at a meager $180 US. Sounds too good to be true? Let's take a look. The first impression you get whilst taking this phone out of the box is that it is absolutely massive. Supporting a 6-inch IPS LCD display at the original 16:9 aspect ratio, the phone is wide, tall, and not the slimmest in the world, and you'll certainly know about it. So snug up right above the screen is a tiny little slit for the earpiece, which is something that we have already seen in the Essential phone and the upcoming Mi Mix 2. And underneath the screen is room for a fingerprint sensor, which isn't exactly the fastest in the world. And they also, like with the Xiaomi Mi Mix, you've got a selfie camera at the bottom of the chin. On the bottom of the phone, you get a USB-C jack, which is flanked by the microphone and the down-facing speaker. Luckily, on the top, we've got a headphone jack, so no cost cutting there, surrounded by a nicely built aluminium frame. Sandwiching the aluminium frame are two slabs of Gorilla Glass, which really add to the heft of the device. Unfortunately, it doesn't have great oleophobic coating. As you'll soon find out, this phone is an absolute fingerprint magnet. Without really using the device, the phone is already plastered with oily prints. As with the trend in 2017, it sports a dual camera system with a 12 megapixel main shooter and also a 5 megapixel secondary camera, supposedly giving us a little bit more information. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So first, let's talk about the screen. As we know, 2017 is the year of the bezel-less phone. And on the surface, the Maze Alpha seems to do a pretty good job at being a bezel-less phone. In fact, it looks a hell of a lot like the Xiaomi Mi Mix from last year. The screen outputs at a decent 1080p with decent color rendition and actually has really excellent viewing angles for a device that's this cheap. And whilst 1080p isn't exactly the highest resolution in the world, it still looks plenty sharp on this display. And in actual fact, you'll find that it's a step above the 720p resolution that you'll find on a lot of these Chinese bezel-less phones. However, I do have an issue with this phone, and that pertains exactly to this term, bezel-less. All the promotional pictures circulating around the web pertaining to this device and also all the other bezel-less Chinese phones out in the market make it seem like all these bezel-less phones have screens that extend all the way to the aluminium frame on the sides, thinking that you would have one of the most immersive displays on the market. However, looking at these devices a little bit closer, you'll notice that there's quite a lot of bezel between the frame and the screen itself. On the sides, it's actually almost equivalent to an iPhone 6, 7 or 8 Plus. And most people end up bashing the iPhone for the size of their bezels. And sure, it looks kind of impressive when you don't see much of a top bezel, but the technology to drive these displays is still needing to go somewhere. And the location that they've chosen is the bottom. So what we've ended up with is a phone that kind of looks like there's a bezel-less screen, but then it ends up with a huge chin. So in reality, whilst the screen to body ratio isn't exactly the worst, it really isn't as magical as the promotional pictures would like you to believe. That being said, the upshot of having such a large body is that it should be able to fit a decent sized battery, and it does. Packing a massive 4,000 milliamp hours, on paper it seems like it should be able to do pretty well, especially given that it's also coupled with some pretty low to mid-range specs. But how does it actually do? Well, in reality, it doesn't necessarily translate to real-world use. So despite the large capacity of this battery, I was still only really able to max out at about 5 to 5.5 hours of screen on time. Whilst on the whole, it's actually pretty admirable considering most flagships in 2017 tend to max out at about 5.5 to 6 hours of screen on time. It still didn't do as good as I was expecting based off the specs. And it certainly doesn't hold a candle up to the Xiaomi Mi Max 2, which has 12 to 14 hours of screen on time. So then using the device from day to day is a decidedly mid-range experience. Android 7.0 does a great job at leveraging the mid-range CPU, and thanks to the largely vanilla Android skin, coupled with 4GB of RAM, the phone works smoothly enough with general navigation and multitasking. That being said, don't expect it to have the smoothest gaming experience because it certainly won't. But if you're a casual gamer and only play very simple platform games, it's going to do that admirably. The phone is also dual SIM, as it is the case with most Chinese phones, and it also has the ability to have one of the slots double up as an SD card expandable slot. So then we've got the single downfiring speaker, which, let's be honest, is not great. The sound comes out tinny and a little bit muffled as well. Then we've got the default launcher, which is pretty basic, and the choice of OEM stock iconography is a little dated. However, it's nothing a third-party launcher downloaded from the Play Store can't fix. And speaking of third-party launchers, it handles the majority of them excellently. Nova runs perfectly, and even the rootless Pixel launcher works perfectly well and gives you a really nice stock Android experience. It also has some nice software features as well, such as the ability to hide the navigation bar to give you a more immersive experience. And then we've also got one-handed mode, and then even gesture controls, which you can use a 3-finger swipe to control the camera, or even use a 3-finger swipe to take a screenshot. And then speaking of this screenshot feature, here's another example of where the dodgy, clunky UI design comes into play. And then speaking of shots, let's talk about the camera. Yes, that's not a mistake, single camera. Because the camera itself is probably the most controversial part of this phone, and actually all Chinese dual camera budget smartphones. So as we know, dual cameras are in vogue in 2017, and it's looking like that's going to be the trend moving forward. But the utility for dual camera systems comes in the fact that they either add a little bit more functionality or they add more information and the ability to improve photo quality. Now the problem with this dual camera setup is that it doesn't seem like the second camera contributes to anything. So we'll start first off by talking about the photo quality. Images that come from this camera in good lighting are alright. You get a decent amount of detail and the sharpness is there, even if it does take a little while for the shutter to actually click. However, in poor lighting, it all falls apart. And then even if you do shoot in good lighting, color rendition isn't exactly the most accurate and dynamic range isn't exactly the best either. So if the extra camera isn't providing us with any extra detail to improve photo quality, what is it used for? Oh, it could be used for a portrait mode like we've seen in the OnePlus or the iPhone. No. Sure, there's a blur mode included into the native camera app, but that's exactly what it is, just a blur filter. All it does is that it applies a circular tilt shift effect that you'd probably see on apps like Instagram or ViscoCam. It's really disappointing. Photos don't look good at all, and it's a really artificial looking blur as well. And then to rub salt into the wound, the camera doesn't shoot at 4K. It maxes out at 1080p at 60 frames per second, and video quality itself is what I'd probably say is average. And I don't think there's any image stabilization either. And whilst we're talking about cameras, we can't ignore the front-facing camera as well. So like the Mi Mix, it's placed on the bottom of the phone, and each time you load the camera app, it does give you a warning to flip the phone around, otherwise you're going to be taking photos of your neck or up your nostrils. Then looking at the photos, the quality is pretty meh, and then the shutter lag for both the front and rear shooters is pretty slow. But now in the end, we are talking about a dual SIM 6-inch bezel-less phone that costs under $180 US. It still feels decent in the hand, and the actual experience of using the phone with Android is actually pretty smooth. There are some elements to the UI outside of stock Android that needs a bit of spit and polish. Other than that, it's actually a pretty close and lightweight rendition of the stock Google experience. So if you're someone who doesn't want to spend an absolute fortune on a bezel-less phone with a dual camera system and still functions really well, then take a look at the Maze Alpha. If you're interested in this phone, take a look at the links in the description below for the lowest prices. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, give us a like as it really helps the channel, and if you haven't already, do consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Say good day to your mum for me. Cheers.